Hey everyone, Chris Carter here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Today, the Steelers return to training camp for their 11th practice of training camp after taking a day off. But I want to talk about the offense because they haven't looked really that good yet. And we've talked about why you shouldn't panic. But I want to talk about the pros and cons that I am seeing at training camp and how that impacts things moving forward. We'll talk about the wide receivers, offensive line, running back, everybody, and why Darnell Washington might be having the best camp right now. All here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of everything on the Pittsburgh Steelers right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. All right, Steelers fans. So, again, the Steelers had Monday off. They come back to practice today. I don't know if they're doing a fully padded practice. If you want to get our post-practice report, do check me out at Carter Critiques on all my social media handles, Twitter, TikTok. I think I actually posted on TikTok, Instagram, and here on YouTube. So if you want to get those are just minute-long, quick recaps before we do our full episode. But the offense right now, as I've said, has not looked particularly good, but I'm giving them the grace of they're playing on what's going to probably end up being one of the best defenses in the NFL. And this is pretty much a new offense that's going on in here. Not only do you have Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf and Kaleb Johnson and all these new faces like Jonnu Smith, but you also have an offensive coordinator in his second year. And I think it's pretty obvious this is not going to be the same offense that you saw last year with Justin Fields or Russell Wilson, because those were also two different offenses that he called. This is going to be an offense that's a bit more complex in the passing schemes that it dials up and why it dials them up and how it dials them up. And what I mean by that is the alignments, and we've talked about it a bit before on here, and I've written about it for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Go to post-gazette.com for my written work there. But the amount of times I'm seeing guys kind of naturally get schemed open in this offense is definitely more than before, because sometimes the scheming open of things just takes a quarterback to seeing it, to be able to see it. I think that's where they're banking a lot more of this offense, is that Aaron Rodgers as a quarterback is going to see those opportunities more often. And that's what they're hoping can kind of lead into some progress there. And what I mean by that is, like, more trips right formations, trips left formations, where they can use guys who starting their route to kind of clear out space for someone else, or find ways, route concepts that best build off each other. But the trick with that, and you're probably wondering, well, wait, why didn't they just do that the last few years? Well, partially it's because when you're doing those route concepts and you're challenging a defense to react, you also need a quarterback that's going to see through that and execute it properly. Because when you do those route concepts, you can get defenses to mess up, but then you can also get defenses that mess you up, because now if you're playing on a concept where there's two or three guys, they don't run in the same area, but they're basing their routes off of each other, and the defense plays it properly, that usually leads to more interceptions, which is why the Steelers have been a lot more basic in their passing concepts, I've felt, really since Ben Roethlisberger even became old Ben Roethlisberger. I think the last time you saw more aggressive passing concepts from the Pittsburgh Steelers was like the first half of the 2020 season. But I do think that there is an improvement on the schematics there. And the thing is, I don't know if that's going to be just a good thing yet, because it still needs other things to come into place. But Mason Rudolph is in a unique position to evaluate this. He was the leading quarterback for Saturday over the weekend while Aaron Rodgers took a day off. And Aaron Rodgers is a unique perspective because he didn't play under Arthur Smith because he went to the Titans last year. So he missed out that first year of Arthur Smith, but he knows the Steelers pretty well. They know him pretty well. He played there for 6 years before that. And he was able to get a lot of experience with the Steelers. And so now he's come back to being an Arthur Smith's offense, but it's a different Arthur Smith's offense than what he ran last year. So I wanted to ask him a few questions just about how he sees the differences of this offense and how it's being run. Take a look at Mason Rudolph when he was answering those questions. I think it kind of helps you get a better feel for what they're doing.
While you weren't here last year with Arthur Smith, you were here a while. A lot of guys are saying that, hey, there's a lot of extra layers to the offense right now with the way Arthur Smith's dialing things up. Have you noticed that, and how have you worked with, how have you felt that difference from the times you were here?
Yeah, I think you try to fit the concepts that you have to the players. I think Arthur's done a good job of that, and I watched all the games from last year, with with the overlays and the play tags. And I feel like I probably agree with you that there's been a good many different concepts that have been installed. Whether they had that last year and it just didn't fit the style, but I'm real comfortable with what we got in, and I think the guys have been executing it well.
How have you liked the tight end heavy packages with all the various talents you have with Pat, Jonnu, Darnell, even Connor?
Yeah, it's a versatile group. Darnell can block a defensive end, very well, and then also, he's caught a lot of balls this camp, and not just short flat routes. He's been catching the ball down the field. Pat is always sure hands and a stud, over the middle, and then John has been very explosive, very very impressive. I think he's going to help us. He's going to add to that room quite a bit. Connor does a great job. Connor's fast, man. He's fast for a tight end, and he makes a lot of good plays. So it's a great group.
So here's the interesting part of this. And the way Mason Rudolph started off his first answer to me was saying, you got to adjust your packages for your personnel. You got to adjust your scheme for your personnel. And I feel like that's what Arthur Smith is trying to do right now. He's drawing up more formations that are tight end heavy because that's the deeper position of the receiving threats on the Steelers roster right now. Pat Freiermuth, Jonnu Smith, and even Darnell Washington, who I'm going to get into later. I'm going to save that for the third segment because there's a few interesting things with Darnell Washington I want to go over. But he's been spectacular this camp, and I mean spectacular. He's been really great blocking and receiving. But I think a big part of what the Steelers need to do on offense is they need to figure out a way to make up for not having that second talented receiver that teams are going to be scared of. And the tight ends are supposed to be that. They haven't turned into that yet. And again, I'm giving them the offense the grace of they're still growing and they're playing against a really talented defense every practice, and there's things like that. But it could become an issue if these guys don't end up getting open. I think a lot of the strategy right now for the Steelers on offense is they want to be good at running the football. They still have to prove that. As I talked about yesterday, the offensive line hasn't really looked good yet. Broderick Jones was able to be so on Sunday in full pads with his first fully padded practice of camp after being injured. Troy Faltano's been, I think, good but not great. Zach Frazier's been good but not great. Mason McCormick's been solid. I look at the offensive line, and they aren't going to be that dominant unit, at least coming out the gate. Now they could coalesce and become a much better unit throughout the year, but they're going to need to be able to lean on something, especially in the early games of the season, to get things done for the offense. And they need these tight ends to be playmakers. And a lot of these the reps we've seen, they haven't been. And there's sometimes they have been. Darnell Washington caught a fade pass that just was unguardable from Aaron Rodgers for a score in a 7 shots like situation at the end of the Sunday practice. Pat Freiermuth, we know what he can do. Jonnu Smith is really talented. You can tell how good of a route runner he is and how dangerous he is with the ball in his hands. But the offense needs somebody to step up there, or they need to go get a wide receiver too. They need to be able to, especially when they get in those red zone, those tighter areas, those tight ends need to be beating guys more regularly with their routes, with their size, with something. And I haven't seen enough of it yet. And again, I feel like maybe it's just still too early, but I think the too early stage is starting to run out in camp, because I do think the Steelers offense does need to show progress in this first preseason game coming Saturday at Jacksonville. It's going to be a big part of it. And the offensive line needs to show progress. And so, if those two things don't happen, if the passing game doesn't evolve or doesn't show progress with the tight ends and how Arthur Smith's lining up and the offensive line doesn't improve as a unit, it will make these schemes pointless. Because at the same time, there's the old saying, it's the Jimmys and the Joes, not the X's and the O's. As important as schematics are in trying to draw up opportunities for you to pass certain people and you to get better, that and you to, we're going to get this guy naturally open. The best thing that wins is talent. That is 90% of the time that's the case. Even when you got something better schemed up, talent can override that. And I think that's where the Steelers are in a position where they could be putting themselves in a spot where, hey, they have the talent and the scheme to work, because these tight ends are really talented. They have an offensive line that's doing better. Aaron Rodgers can see the field. That'll be great. But they can't lose sight of what they're trying to be this year. That's a balanced offensive attack that keeps defenses off guard. And that part of keeping the defenses off guard is the thing that's going to help them in their biggest games if they're able to pull that off. Because if they do, then they can put points up, they can get early leads, and then they can let the defense pin their ears back and say, okay, we have a lead to protect, we can be more aggressive. So I do think that's an an underrated part of what the Steelers need to be this season. But, the question is, on Arthur Smith, are these new schemes going to improve the offense with all the opportunities they're drawing up? Or is it just going to make it more complex and harder for people to execute because they don't have the guys to run those positions? I think it's the former, but only time will tell. We'll keep an eye on that. I want to talk about the running backs next because we got a chance to talk to both Kaleb Johnson and Kenneth Gainwell over the weekend. We'll talk about that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you that this show is brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. The NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. It's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, me and Locked On Steelers listeners are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. I've used Yahoo Fantasy for years, and the updates that they're rolling out this month are wild and in the best way. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over the 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where each week the lowest scoring team gets eliminated until there's only one team left standing. Will you be the last team standing? With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're into the classics, you can still play in head-to-head private leagues or just join a public league. That's yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Let's make fantasy this season the best one yet by going to Yahoo Fantasy. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our show here today. Now, if you recall, I talked a bit after the Wednesday practice about Kaleb Johnson and the backs on backers drill, and he did not do well. But hey, he's a rookie, offense, learning, go up against a really talented defense. Malik Harris, a much bigger guy than him. Kaleb Johnson came out and I thought improved in the Friday Night Lights practice when they ran backs on backers. They didn't do backs on backers Sunday, but I thought he improved. He got up in the hole. He put his hands on Malik Harris and didn't beat Malik Harris, but then did beat Mark Robinson twice, one of which started a fight between them and really the whole linebackers and running backs units just going at it. It was pretty crazy. But Kaleb Johnson, I think, is learning at a good pace to try to get his other roles down. He's taking his approach very seriously, and I think that Steelers fans are going to like his style and the way that he goes about things with what he's working on and how he's trying to improve as a player, and just his kind of like blue collar, everyday working man approach to things. Like he's just like, hey, all I can do is this right here, and he's sticking to it, and that's how he's continuing to improve. Here was Kaleb Johnson when we got to catch up and ask with him about how he feels things are going with his progress.
Kaleb, now that you've had some padded practices, how have you graded yourself in pass protection, running with a fully padded line, and those things?
No, I really give it back to my line and really just show them what I can do. And, overall, it's just been awesome, man. I've just been learning and going day by day and, just learning from the vets.
I saw the excitement from Eddie Faulkner when you won back-to-back reps against Mark Robinson on Friday night. Yeah. What was he saying to you, like, to try to get you to be better in that drill?
No, he was just telling me about my technique and make sure I apply my technique to actual, play, and I did that, and he was really proud of me for it, so I'm just keep doing it and just keep learning. So
one thing I appreciate about Kaleb is he's very just down to earth with his answers. Like he's not trying to make anything long-winded. He's not trying to be extra funny with anything. He's just being straight up every time I ask him questions because he's just focused right now, and that's where he should be. And that's not saying that he's got it. He's definitely going to be a dog. I think he's going to be a dog. I loved his college tape, but I do see him making progress, and sometimes it's a very bad sign when you see the coaches give the players the coach up and saying like, hey, do this. We're trying to get you to do this. Like, for example, he's right about the hands inside thing. That was the thing I saw with Malik Harris. Malik Harris, a much bigger guy. When you're the shorter guy, and they always say lowest man wins when it comes to blocking in football. And your job is to be the lower man, keep your shoulder pads below theirs, and get your hands inside and drive while keeping a wide base. And that was something that Kaleb Johnson wasn't doing consistently in the first backs on backers drill. He did that much better in the Friday Night Lights practice. And to me, that's a good sign for him moving forward. And if he can take that kind of approach to every single lesson that Eddie Faulkner's teaching him, and I think Eddie Faulkner's a good running backs coach, I think it's going to give him a big advantage down the long run if he just keeps stacking skills and stacking traits that he learns and improves at. Kaleb Johnson can be a tough running back and eventually the starting running back. But that's not to overlook Jaylen Warren either, because I think Jaylen Warren's looked pretty solid. I think that he's been this style of Jaylen Warren that we've expected. He's fast, he's explosive, he runs hard, he'll pass protect well. I think that's something that Jaylen Warren has on his side. And a lot of people look at Jaylen Warren, he can be the third down back. Kaleb Johnson can be 1 and 2. The third down back, I think, might end up being Kenneth Gainwell, because that dude is ridiculous. He's lining up as a wide receiver all the time. He's doing all these different things. And I want you to get a sense. We talked to Kenneth Gainwell, the Steelers' third string running back, who might not even be necessarily third string running back with how much he's getting used in Arthur Smith's offense. He's lining up everywhere throughout the games because they want the speed and the mismatches. But hear from Kenneth Gainwell on how things are going with him in the offense.
Kenny, you're lining up all over the offense. You're lining up in the backfield, split out wide in the slot. What's that been like, just getting to know all those different roles in this offense with Arthur Smith and Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, that's a cool piece that we're doing, and I'm embracing it. I'm taking it all in, but at the same time, just showing it to A-Rod and the Coach Smith about what I can do, outside in the backfield. It's just a great piece.
How much preparation and time does it take to learn all those different roles? Because we're talking about footwork to beat different defensive backs and linebackers at different spots.
Yeah, it takes time. These walkthroughs are very important. So you got to attack the walkthrough the same way you're attacking the game.
When I talked to Kaleb, I asked him if he's trying to learn from you all different. He said nah, he got that because he just is he doesn't know how to run all those routes. But what have you seen out of the rookie as far as him adapting and how people have challenged him?
I love the way he's carrying himself right now. He's doing a great job at that, and I think he just needs to continue to do his job each and every day. Come here, stay focused on the small details, but just not let the outside noise get to him, and him just keep working. He's a rookie. He got to continue to learn each and every day. So he got to just keep going.
That is like the eighth. Endorsement of Kaleb Johnson's spirit and the way he carries himself that I hear. And that's another good sign for Kaleb Johnson when you got that. And again, I think that goes to his work ethic and what he's doing. I think that means he's probably going to turn into one of those guys that can be nasty down the line. And he could even be that now, but I think what's going to be really interesting for the Steelers among several things is how they deploy these running backs, because Jaylen Warren's your RB1 right now, but you look at Kaleb Johnson. Do you want Kaleb Johnson as your power back on first and second down, and then bring in Jaylen Warren after that, or bring in Jaylen Warren, as your third down back? Do you want that, or do you want that to be Kenneth Gainwell? Because Kenneth Gainwell can run routes, can get mismatches, can catch the ball, can make plays. Those are things that I think the Steelers absolutely do need in this offense, and that's another safety valve, I think, or another way of relieving the pressure of not having a true wide receiver 2 on this roster, is getting a guy like Gainwell, getting guys like Darnell Washington involved. Again, we'll talk about Darnell Washington more next segment. Getting all sorts of guys involved. And I think that is where the Steelers have to be able to capitalize, is getting more of those types of guys involved naturally with the offense, getting Aaron Rodgers to see them and making sure that they can catch the ball. Because if they do that, it won't eliminate the need for wide receiver 2, but it will mitigate the damage that lack will actually do. And I think that's where the Steelers offense can really find some footing this year if they're able to get that done. But again, the running backs, I think they're doing a fine job with what they have. We'll keep you up to date on how things go. We'll see if that fully padded practice comes back on Tuesday and who stands out there. But I want to talk about the guy who I think, and this isn't say he's having, when I say the best camp, I mean the most impressive as far as what we've seen of them. And I think it's Darnell Washington. And I want to tell you why, because it's not just for working with Aaron Rodgers. I think he's upped his game by a lot in many respects. We'll talk about that next year on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. Be right back. But first, I want to remind you, this show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Monarch Money, of course, is the place that you go to help you save your money and also understand your money. Monarch Money is an app that you can download right to your phone. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. It's not just a budgeting app, though. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. You stop just managing your money and start actually building wealth. If you're like me, you probably have a lot of subscriptions and place a lot of orders online. Over time, that adds up to be a lot of money. Well, with Monarch Money, you can keep a close watch on all that spending in an easy-to-see, organized, and convenient presentation. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year only at Monarch Money. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our episode here talking a lot about the Steelers offense. And I want to talk about the guy on offense that has really impressed me. That's Darnell Washington, not just because he's a better route runner, he's a more complete receiving threat as a tight end, but because overall his approach has been very sharp throughout camp. He's been a great blocker. He's been a great receiver. I think he is going to be a bigger threat for the Steelers than they even may realize right now. I think that he is so important to what they want to do. I think that he's a guy who, if you're the Steelers, you want to try to get him on the field as much as you can, but you also can't afford to, it's the question, do you want to force him in ahead of Jonnu Smith or Pat Freiermuth, or do you want to force him in as just the third tight end on the field and then sacrifice either a running back or a wide receiver at that point? That's where things could go. But I think that Darnell Washington is doing a really good job with a lot of different things. Again, he's crisper in his routes. He's able to get open against guys. He catches contested balls. We kind of knew that second part there, but he's also been blocking well. He's also been understanding well. And I think that he's understanding how to win leverage situations a lot more. And a lot of people are joking, maybe he should be left tackle, but hear from Darnell Washington. First, you're going to hear from some questions from me about how he's performing and what he's looking for and things that I'm just trying to assess on my own. But then eventually you'll hear a question from my buddy Brian Batkill from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette about the whole tackle question. Could he be the left tackle of the future while Broderick Jones is standing right there? But without further ado, let's get to Darnell Washington because he spoke for a bit. And this one's a little bit longer. It's like a little over 3 minutes. But I think you're going to appreciate some of his answers.
Darnell, offense got their second chance yesterday with the pads to get after it. How do you feel like you guys did answer the call?
I feel like yesterday we came out a little bit more, competed a little bit better than the first day. I don't know what the cause was, but I feel like for sure offense came out, responded a little bit better than they did, previously the first time we was in pads. So
you won 4 straight reps. It looked like yesterday. How strong have you felt, both in your blocking abilities that you've had, but also in your increased route responsibilities? They're asking a lot more of you there too.
Yeah, I feel good. Blocking is just a second nature thing that that I'm. God gave me the ability to be a good blocker. So just going those back-to-back reps, with top-notch guys like Alex and Lee Allen, those guys. At the end of the day, it's iron on iron. Component of the game, and they just getting me better, and I'm getting them better. Even though when I'm fatigued or whatever, I still got to, next play. So I feel like overall, it was well. So.
During minicamp, I asked you about your role in the offense. You said that Arthur Smith's asking a lot more of you. Now that you've had 9 practices or so, how do you feel about the really expanded role that you're getting this year and how that fits in with Aaron Rodgers and everyone else?
Yeah, just with my role, just today, like as she mentioned, she saw, me catching a little bit more balls today. And, just with this offense, I just feel like my role is just improving day by day. I just got to keep showing it, keep displaying it, and things like that. So it's just pretty much just do what I can and just get a bigger role, sooner or later. So.
You mentioned blocking being second nature to you. What do you say when people ask the question, could this guy actually be an NFL tackle, especially with what you've been doing out here in some of these drills?
You said, can I?
Well, I mean, if someone I feel like if you said pass catching is maybe the biggest question about you, the second biggest question might be, could this guy actually be a tackle in the NFL if he wanted to be?
Personally, I feel like I can, but right now, I'm a tight end, so I'm going to focus on that. But, later on down the road or any time in the road, if they ask for me to do that, I'm going to do it to my best ability. I personally, I'm going to do it with lots of confidence. So I feel like I can if I wanted to.
I was going to say, you said right now, are you looking at like a second career at some point? Like, you're going to play until you're 40 doing that? I don't remember you ever talking like that before, but.
I don't know what God, got to play for me, but as of right now, I'm focused on the tight end role until I can't or whenever my time's up.
So you're not resistant to that idea necessarily? Or you're not, like, I guess, offended that people say that?
No, not at all. Personally, me, I'm an open-minded dude. So if that comes in day-to-day life, football standpoint, relationship standpoint, I'm just an open-minded dude. I had to take criticism, I had to take anything like that. I see both sides of every story. That's just how I live life, man.
Now, when it comes to Darnell Washington, I have heard this theory of him playing offensive tackle since they drafted him. And I've considered it in the back of my head, like, okay, that's something to keep out in mind for. But with the drafting of Broderick Jones and Troy Fautanu in back-to-back years, kind of just killed that, right? But if Broderick Jones doesn't work out, could he be the answer? I think it'll be really interesting, and this may be an Omar Khan sneaky move. And again, this is a lot of hypotheticals, thinking way down the line. Do not consider this me saying this is definitely going to happen, this should happen, it will happen, none of that. But I'm saying here's a theory on how this could play out if it were to play out that way. Let's say Darnell Washington, who was drafted the same year as Broderick Jones, plays 2 more years, this year, next year, and is a solid tight end for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They still have Pat Freiermuth under contract, and maybe but Broderick Jones by that point hasn't turned into the tackle that they really want. And maybe they've signed Broderick Jones to keep him on for another year. Maybe he's got that 5th-year extension. Maybe he doesn't. But that could be the time after Darnell Washington signs an extension. Like maybe they try to sign Darnell Washington to an extension as a tight end position, because an extension as a tight end, a lot less expensive than an extension as an offensive tackle. What the Steelers may be waiting on is they might be waiting for his rookie contract to expire, for him to be re-signed as a tight end, and then by that time they'll know how the Broderick Jones experiment has gone. Was he a bust? Was he a really good player? Was he great? And that could determine how it works. Because if Broderick Jones turns out to be a bust, and I'm not saying that he is, not saying that he will be, just saying he hasn't proven to be the tackle that they traded up for just yet. But if that were to happen and he isn't the guy, and Darnell Washington's just sitting right there, the Steelers could spend a high pick on offensive tackle, or they can see if they can spend a mid-round pick while addressing another position early, and then tell Darnell Washington, hey, you're going to play this position. And Darnell Washington has the build of it might be interesting to see like what changes in his body as he prepares. But I do think that there is I do think if you look at his build, he's listed at 6'7", 264. Now, I can tell you straight up, he ain't no 264. He's bigger than that, at least 284. And I think Darnell Washington even let that slip to us during minicamp at one point. He could put on some more muscle, put on some more weight, and probably be an offensive tackle if he wanted to. The question is, would he have the skill set? Now, he's winning a lot of these one-on-one blocking drills. He is crushing people, and that's where I think a lot of people are impressed by, and they're saying, hey, what if he's left? What if he's the new tackle on the roster? I think that's something the Steelers have their eyes on, but again, I think they're going to try to do what they can to make the best money deal for themselves out of it. Re-sign him as a tight end, maybe let him play a year as a tight end, but then maybe say, okay, now you switch to tackle, and then they have him under control under a tight end contract for at least a year or two before he gets to cash in on a big offensive tackle money if he is a good offensive tackle. But back to Darnell Washington, the other reasons I'm impressed with him, again, the routes that he's running, he's getting open deep, he's getting open short, he's doing it without really having to push off too much. This guy is coming to play, and if he's your third string tight end, it's going to be tough for teams to block them. This goes back to my first segment, as far as coverage-wise. I think the Steelers' defense is built with big, tall, fast corners that can run with most guys and bang with most tight ends throughout a game. And maybe the Steelers' secondary is just that much better suited than most teams to take on a tight end situation like the Steelers have. But if that is the case, and there are other teams that are going to struggle with that, it could be a really good sign to watch how these three play out together in the Steelers offense and how they get the ball at times, because Darnell Washington, I think, has been very, very good to even great at times, and what I've seen out of him in a training camp practice. But Johnny Smith's having a good camp. Pat Fryman's having a good camp. This is going to be a really interesting group going into this year, and Darnell Washington should not be overlooked just because he's third on the depth chart at the tight end position. With that being said, we're going to call this episode right here. I'm your host, Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers podcast. Remember, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of your Monday through Friday episodes of the Locked On Steelers podcast. You can also check me out, Chris Carter, at Carter Critiques on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, all the social media, same handle everywhere. You can also read my work in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette by going to post-gazette.com. Find me there as well as you find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Back tomorrow after the Steelers. I'll be back tomorrow with my next episode of Locked On Steelers. But of course, stay tuned for later today when I have my post practice report on what goes down in Steelers training camp, all here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.